welcome to the podcast, Life, Legacy, and Leadership. Today, we have a very, 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 very special guest. We have this is Mansur royalty. This is the Emma Mansur that we have on the podcast today. So we welcome you, Emma.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So Emma, if we jump right into this, your family is legendary here at Brookhill. You probably went to camp, third grade, right away. Yep. Your parents had you here because both your parents were counselors, right?
Yes, that's right. My dad was a counselor here I think he was on all-summer staff for 8 years. It was a long time, all through high school and his college years. And then my mom was a counselor for 1 year. And she was friends with some of the other counselors at college. And they were like, Sarah, you have to come up. And she met my dad that summer and took him away. So that's my little Brookhill story of how we founded it.
So that's the reason Monty is not still here today.
Yeah, that's literally the only reason he's not still here today.
And then, of course, you had uncles, and, uncles plural.
Lots of family. My dad has 6 kids in his family, and I'm pretty sure 5 of them were on all summer staff, maybe even all at the same time at one point.
Wow, that is absolutely incredible. I can't wait to get into your legacy, their legacy, and all that good stuff. But before we do, we're not going to our sponsors. It almost sounded like I was going before we go to our sponsors. We're going to play a game.
Wow.
We are going to play the Brookhill game. I know you've been practicing.
I have been practicing.
And you know all about this game.
I do.
It's a Brookhill game because Brookhill podcast. That's all we're doing. You're going to have 30 seconds, just like you've seen everybody do. You got 3 categories. You got Brookhill songs, you got Brookhill cabins, and you got Brookhill activities. And it can be old and young. It does not have to be anything that we exactly do today.
Okay.
So that allows you to bounce in and out of old school things. It's always fun to see what people remember. So that's why we do that. So it's completely open, even old cabin, old pavilion cabins, right? That would be cool if you named some of those. So, all right. You have 30 seconds. When the timer is up there, you may begin now.
Lipizzans, Pintos, Pearls, Percherons, Fillies, Thoroughbreds, Newspaper, Small Lake, Big Lake, Go-Karts, Riflery, Archery, Horseback, Nature, Crafts, Hackneys, Broncos, Mustangs, Mavericks, Morgans, Galcinos, Frog Song, There's a Fire on the Mountain Tonight, that's it.
I got 23 unofficially. Where does that put her on the leaderboard? I think you needed 2 more to climb the ladder really high. Yeah, you needed ahead. 2 more. You really needed to get into that 25, 26 mark, and you had the time.
Dang.
You had the time. The big 3, Anna, Lindsay, and Callan. That is our Brookhill big 3 right there. We're now going to rank all old staff based on this game.
That sounds good.
The top 3 staff we've ever had right now are Anna, Lindsay, and Callan.
All right.
That's
very impressive.
All right, so you got here in the 3rd grade. You have a brother.
I do.
His name is?
Everett Mansur.
Everybody knows Everett.
Everybody knows Everett.
And he is older?
He's older. He's 2.5 years older, 3 grades. So he was here before me. Then I followed in his footsteps the whole way.
So were you one of those little sisters that were like, why can't I go to Brookhill? That's not fair. I'm ready.
I remember when we drop him off, I was like, come on, I can just put me in a cabin. I'm ready to go. I was never I'm so excited to have the week alone with my parents. I'm like, get me out there. Not that I'm not excited to have a week alone with my parents, but at the time, I was, right. I was just so ready. And then even when I became a camper, I feel like I was just I was so Brookhill. I loved every single thing about it. I remember before Everett's first year at camp, my dad would draw us maps of camp and was like, okay, so this is the dining room. This is where you're going to eat, back when that existed. And if you put your elbows on the table, this is where you have to run, and all those things.
He's coaching y'all up.
Oh yeah. So we were pro campers, first year, first day. We're oh, I've got this. We were learning wagon songs and everything. So it was great.
I love that. And so 3rd grade, can you remember who your counselor was?
Noelle was my counselor.
Noelle
is also
Gehringer,
a kitchen
I love
legend.
it. Oh, kitchen. You followed full on in her footsteps.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
That was Lipizzan on the right. Yeah,
Lipizzans.
Yep. And then what'd you? Can you go through them?
Okay.
Pressure.
I was trying to think about this, and I can name all of them except for one.
Okay. That's the way everybody is.
It was like my second year, I think, and I like cannot for the life of me remember what her name is.
Someone's probably listening to this going, no.
I'm so sorry if you remember me.
I thought I impacted her life.
But I had Noelle, and then I had someone. And then I had Katie DeRock, I think my third year. And then I had Hannah Allen, I want to say my fourth year. Fifth year was
Oh no.
Oh wait, come on. Okay, wait, you go for 7 years, right?
That's right. I can name all 7. I can name every cabin and all 7.
Twice?
I have
So
one
that's not-
named Monty Mansur twice. Your dad. I had him fourth.
That's not quite.
I was in the Hackneys with Monty 4th and 6th grade.
Okay.
So
And then I had, okay, I can't remember who the next one was. Once again, so sorry if you're listening to this.
they're crying.
Right. And then I had Katie Bob, my JCT year.
That's
And
so
then I
fun.
had
She was a legend.
Mackenzie, my graduate year.
Yes.
Oh, wait. My 5th summer was another person that I can't remember.
Oh no.
But
We
she
need
was
to
only
move
here
on.
for 1 year. So yeah, let's
we
keep
need
going.
to move on. You're disappointing people left and right.
I can mention other people on staff.
So did camp live up to what in your mind you hoped it was?
Yes.
Because
Short answer.
your dad's all coaching you and all this
Right.
kind of stuff, and was it and more? Like, was there
So
things
much
that you were
more.
like, okay, wow, what was it for you?
I feel like you can never explain, especially to a young child, like what camp is actually going to mean to them before they're here. And like truthfully, like I don't even know that we can put into words, like still to this day, what is happening to a first year camper all the way to a last year camper to JCs and everything. But so yes, so much more than just you're going to have so much fun because you are, and you can talk about the songs and everything, but you can never really fully explain how much your counselors are going to love you and how much you're going to be able to connect with people. Like I remember as a camper, I never really came with like friends my own age until I was like, I think maybe my last 3 years I brought a friend from home. And so I was constantly like meeting new friends. And like that was, I'm a little bit older, and so I wasn't necessarily on social media way back then. So I'm not that old. I'm 25. But we
You
didn't
weren't on
have
MySpace or Facebook.
shockingly. We didn't have Instagram when I was like a third grade camper. So my friends, like I would occasionally write a letter in the middle of the year, but typically it was like, oh, I'll see you next year if we like happen to go the same week. So that was really fun. Like I remember making friends that like lived in New York at the time, and like friends from like all over that I would never have met anywhere else. And then not even to mention like all the counselors that had like such an impact on my life way back then. So yeah, definitely cannot put that into words.
That's incredible. I think for me, Brookhill is consistency.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, whether it's the counselors being there, the traditions that we have,
Mm-hmm.
the consistent connection that you always matter here.
Yep.
That Brookhill really is that constant that I think our world doesn't provide.
Yeah, for sure.
And, you had it in your home, but other people may not.
Right.
And so I think that's what people can draw on, that consistent connection, consistent fun, consistent Jesus. So
Yeah.
I love that. Now, you were from Little Rock.
Yes.
Right. What school did you go to?
I went to Little Rock Christian.
Okay,
I was
you
a
did.
warrior.
That's what I thought. Okay, you graduated from there?
I did.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, so you had a lot of people from your school that
Yes.
were attending.
Yes.
So you always knew people. Did
Yeah.
you try and purposely go to a different week than everybody else?
So we went with the Nash family, and they were like, I think when we first started going with them, they still lived in Kansas City, and then they moved to South Carolina. And so since we were an hour away, we were like, when can you guys come? We'll go the same week. And so we would always line up with them because Everett and Jansen were like basically the same age. And so they were best friends. And then me and Jacob started going the same year, and then Belle came later.
Belle was the baby.
So, yep. So that was fun. We'd always go to Chili's before. So I was never like going with the Little Rock crowd. I would always love to like go with them because like, I mean, even though Belle's like a couple years younger than me, we were always close. Like even when we were coming to camp, like camp age. But so that was really fun. I always wanted to go like their week. My parents would give me the option, like, do you want to try to go with school friends? And I was like, no, I see them all the time.
Exactly.
Let me go with camp friends and we go make some new friends. So
exactly.
that was my
I wish
thing.
people could understand that.
Yeah.
You know, and then did you feel the pressure to become a counselor, or was that something you wanted on your own?
I wanted to be a counselor more than anything. I feel like even when I was a camper, I was like, I'm just ready. And I think part of that is like my parents were counselors. Like my dad is still a camp counselor. Like he runs a school now, and he calls like planning periods off activities still, like those kind of things. That is just his mindset. And so everything that we did as a family, when we were doing children's ministry, when we were doing schools, when we were doing everything, I'm being trained as a camp counselor my whole entire life. So even like when I was in like 6th grade, I remember like my friends and I would go eat with the little kids at like the picnic tables, and we would like just go like meet like younger campers and like that kind of thing, and it was just fun. And so by the time I was able to throw on a red t-shirt, I was like, let's go. Like I'm I'm so ready. I don't think my parents ever like asked me if I wanted to be a red t-shirt. I think there was like an assumption that I would. There was never like any doubt in my mind. And then I was like, that was when we had to like print off the application, send it in and everything. So I was like, all right, grab the printer out. I got to do it January 1st back then. So yeah.
So it was just a natural fit for you. You
Yep.
grew up in the ministry.
Yep.
Your family were kids pastors, sometimes working in education, whatever. They were always mentoring young people.
Right.
That was just who they were as counselors. That's who they are in their life. That's who they still are today.
Right.
And you were around that. So they were definitely coaching you up, and you enjoyed that.
Yeah.
And so being a red t-shirt just fit.
It did.
And I don't even know how you got in the kitchen. Like, I don't, because back in that time, there was no support staff.
Right.
Now, and just to let everybody know, Emma worked this summer, by the time this comes out. Emma worked this last summer again. So she took how many years off,
I think there were 3 years that I was not here. So this would have been my 4th year off.
So 3 years not here. So I guess 2019 was your last summer. From 2019 to today, has there been a lot of changes?
Just a couple. I really thought that I had like seen every change because there had been so many. And then finally I was like, wow, this is so crazy. And then somebody's like, yeah, and we have 2nd graders here now. I was like, what? So they just keep coming, honestly, like constantly. And at this point, we haven't even done the 2-week yet. So I've never even been to a 2-week session.
So what's funny, if I bust out my notes here, I have a file. It's called Rip Old Brookhill. And it was made by our current LCs.
Oh my
And it's all the
gosh.
changes we've
That's
made
so long.
in their time here.
That's
are all
crazy.
individual changes. I guarantee you they could add more to
Yeah.
this. But it was just, here's some things that it's time. We got to
Yeah.
really, and none of it was the heart of Brookhill.
Right.
The heart of Brookhill has
Right.
never changed and will never change.
Mm-hmm.
Heart's the same, red tees are the same, Fun Connection Jesus is the same, none of that. But there were just a lot of legit systems.
Right.
Systems.
Systems.
that maybe we'd outgrown.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, all right, we got to get our systems matching our growth.
Yeah.
Bottom line.
Yep.
And so you worked the kitchen with Connie. I remember hiring you. You had graduated high school.
Yes.
And I remember my challenge to you. I said, Emma, I want you to be in the kitchen and help raise up the next staff. I was like, because we had, now we have a whole recruiting area.
Yeah.
But kitchen was it.
Mm-hmm.
That was the best chance we had to recruit JCs. So I was like, you got to make it fun. You got to make it awesome. Just be yourself, right? No pressure. Just be yourself, which is fun. And you got to recruit the whole staff. Do you remember that conversation?
Yeah, I do. I remember like before, like my 2nd year as a JC, you came up to me when I was working kitchen, like my 2nd week. I did 4 weeks and 2 in cabin, 2 in kitchen. You came up to me the 2nd week in kitchen and you were like, what do you think about this area? Like, do you like it here? And the whole time, like, since I'd been there a lot, like Connie knew me. She was like, yeah, she likes it. And so you were like, what would you think about like doing this next year? And I was like, yeah. Because at that point, I'm like, whatever it takes to get me here all summer. Like
Right.
before your first year on staff, you're just like, get me there. Like
Right.
I will
Get my
do
foot in the
whatever.
door.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so I was so excited. I remember I like sprinted to Aaron Candlebinder King. And I was like, guess what David just said? And so it was like really cool. And then when
So she was the one in your job, right?
She had been there the summer before. So my first year.
Okay, so we had put
as
her
a
in the
JC.
cabin. I think the Palominos.
Yes, that's right.
So who was in between you?
So
and
she
her?
was It was Lexi Scholzvik.
Yes.
Yes.
Lexi. Yeah.
Yeah. So I like really connected with Aaron my first summer, and like truly like that is why I was like so excited to take over kitchen. And so I like ran to her to tell her, and it was so exciting. And then I remember like when we were talking about it, like in my interview that spring, you were talking about like not just like being in kitchen for a year. It was like let's see like where this goes. Let's see like what we can do here. And that whole summer, it was like every time you'd come up to me, you'd be like, how's it going? How do you like it? Like not forcing me to like stay in the kitchen at all, but just like making sure like I was like seeing your vision kind of, and like had those same thoughts and that same like mindset. And I did. And I think like since I was hired like a year earlier than like most people were for kitchen, I was thinking like, 2 years, like that'll be good. And then I'll maybe go to cabin, maybe do something else. And then my second year in kitchen, I was like, I could be here forever. Like you can't get me out of here. Everybody.
And what was it? Like, what was it for you? Was it the mentoring the high school girls?
I really loved the connections that I got to make, the relationships that I got to have, and being there. It's like it's the exact same as being in a cabin when you have your campers come back every year, and when you are able to watch them grow from like third grade up. It's the exact same. Like I had JCs that were like tiny JCs to all summer staff. So I just like couldn't get over that. I loved getting to spend so much time with them and getting to mentor them and even have relationships with them. Like throughout the year, I would go like visit them and they would come see me. Like if they were ever driving through Waco, I was like, do you want to come meet me at Magnolia? I went to Baylor. So
yeah, and that was like the heart of the Magnolia, right? Yeah, what Chip and Joanne, yeah.
Yes.
That was the heart of that. But see, you can't do that with a fourth grader.
Right.
You can't say, hey, when you're driving through Waco,
right,
come see me.
Right.
But
so
with
it
the
was
high
even
school
deeper.
campers, which is, when we say in high school, we're talking about people who finished the 10th grade going into the 11th grade, going into the 12th, or going into college. So these are 17-year-olds, right? These are older people, so it allows you to do that. And the coolest moment for me ever, I love making a plan or having a dream and see it fulfilled.
Yeah.
And you and I talked about, let's raise up this staff. Because one of the things that I was trying to work on was creating this legacy counselor concept.
Yeah.
Right? And you were one of those first. And there was a group with you, your brother,
right,
and a few others that were legacy counselors, 4 summers or more, to be on the wall. And we were creating this whole concept, right? And I wanted you to help us raise up this staff that had that in their heart. And maybe not specifically, because some of that hadn't come to fruition, but
right,
I was starting to work in me what exactly that was tangibly. And I remember your last summer. Gosh, I don't know when we did it.
I think it was I really want to say it was at.
Was it training?
I think it was at training.
Okay. Is that training where I said, do you remember the moment? I'm foggy on the moment. I just remember asking it. I said, basically, girls, if you were in kitchen with Emma at some point in your JC years and now you're on all summer staff, stand up. And it was every
single one.
Girl in the room.
Yeah.
Every girl in the room. Now, if it was guy staff, you say, "Oh, no big deal. There's only like 8 of them." But it's
it looks
girl
like the whole
staff.
Room.
It's girl staff. So it's huge.
Yeah.
How did that make you feel?
It was like I'm sure I was crying. Like just like getting to watch them, because I think sometimes like being there for 4 years, you forget. Like I remember that I had those people as JCs, but a lot of them at that point were like my best friends. And
can you remember any of the names? Can you?
Yes. Okay. So. Well, I guess like all the LCs this past summer were my kitchen girls. And so they were like the young girls on staff that year. And so like Neely, Maddie, Levia, even Maggie, they were all, and then even like back when I was on staff, it was like Maddie Lechtenberg, like Olivia Brewington, Hannah Griffin. They all have different last names now.
Right. Sorry for last name
This is
changes.
just for campers that
That's
don't
right.
still follow you on Instagram. Sam was not under me, but we worked together.
Okay.
So she was a year older than me. So I guess she was like the one. Yeah.
Okay.
And then I'm trying to think. There were tons.
Yeah, no, I mean,
Yeah.
there's no way you could name, but just to those names. What's cool is you named about 5 names that are still here today.
Yeah.
Is that crazy?
That is crazy. I'm really glad they're still here because I still have some people that I came into camp knowing this summer.
Yes. And so this summer, we made a call. I noticed we needed. It wasn't help running the kitchen. I mean, it was, but I mean, we had the people in place to run the kitchen.
Right.
But we needed that kind of replacing of Lindley. Really.
Yeah.
Lindley was being spread too thin.
Right.
And I was like, I noticed that. It was during training. And I'd seen Tim Brooks do this many times, or Steve Sexton, where they would just call people during training and be like, hey, what if?
Yeah.
And they would show up.
Yeah.
So I'd seen that done many times. And I thought, let me call Emma and just say, what if? But God knew
Yeah.
that you were supposed to be here this summer. It's
Yep.
crazy. And you instantly were like, yeah. And I was like, oh, yeah. Okay. Let me call Lindley. I didn't even run this past her. I was fishing.
Yeah.
And I got a bite. And I was like, should I reel this in? Kind of a thing. And so you show up this summer. But here was the cool part. You don't know this part. I told your kitchen staff, and they all went crazy because they're a little bit older. Your kitchen staff is older. So I think
Yeah.
they're all like sophomores, juniors in college. So they had you in 2019 in the kitchen.
Yeah.
How crazy is that?
It's absolutely wild. We have a photo that's on a Friday night when Tyler and I would do JC cleanup and all that kind of
Yes.
stuff. And at the end we're like, how was your week? Don't forget to turn in your t-shirts tomorrow, all those kind of things. And we'd always take a photo with them. And so Trinity, week 1, who works in the kitchen, she found a photo from, I think it was week 1 of 2019, and all 3 of us are in it because they all 3 worked the same week that summer, and then I was obviously there. So absolutely crazy. And then also Meredith, I found a picture last week. She was in one of my activities, and it's just been so crazy. I remember Rachel just because our dads were both on staff, not together, but they knew each other obviously. And so I think when she was a 3rd grade camper, we were there the same week. And so I have very vivid memories of teeny tiny baby Rachel as a camper. And so it's so cool getting to, and Trinity's a Lake Charles girl, so I know lots of them. And so it's so cool even if I didn't know them crazy well back then, getting to see and hear the memories that they have of me. And I was like, wait, you were at that place? You were there that week? All these different things. So I think that's been one of the coolest parts about being back this summer is just seeing all those different memories and getting to make new ones too.
Well, just side note, I had your dad and Rachel's dad as counselors.
Wow.
That's crazy.
That is crazy.
But yeah, when I said Emma, they were, and of course, gosh, we have 50, 60 people on staff now. They were all eating. When I told some of them, they were like, no, everybody was freaking out. Everybody was fangirling. I mean, it just speaks a lot to the legacy that you left here, that they weren't you brought in who? You know what I mean?
Right.
Would you
have told that story if that had happened?
Yes, I would have. That would be a funny story.
It's
hey,
so
just so
funny.
you know, everyone hates it that you're here.
I would have loved that.
Yeah.
Welcome.
So have a good rest of the summer. Yeah, no, that's not at all what it was. And I love the legacy, that you left here, and then what you're doing this summer or have done this summer by the time this comes out, is just it's amazing. So what do you think? What are some of the leadership things that maybe you've learned that you've been able to implement here?
Yeah.
And then maybe you've taken back home.
Yeah.
Because you've mentored all these girls. These girls obviously wanted you to be here, so there were some things you've learned or you're implementing. Let's talk about some leadership.
Yeah, I think for me, leadership has always been very relationally focused. And so I think it's very hard to lead people. It's a lot easier to lead JCs to do something on Saturday than Monday because you just don't know them on Monday. They don't have that trust in every single thing that you say yet. And that's not a bad thing, I don't think. And so really working hard to build relationships so that the leadership can just be as good as possible. Not that you should just blindly follow anybody, but it's a lot easier to trust someone when you have that foundation and knowledge built in like a solid relationship with a person. And so it was always really important to me here. And then also I work at a school now. And so that's kind of how I treat students. I'm not a teacher. I do marketing and communications. So I just like force myself to be with kids because that's what I love doing. But like even those kids that I hang out with at school, it's never like, oh, I'm just going to like go sit with them and like stay silent. I don't want to know anything about their lives. No, I'm like going and I have to know like, what did you do this weekend? Why did you do that this weekend? Like that kind of thing. I don't just want to know like, it's never just like the surface level questions. I think it's so important to like really figure out who we are. And so I remember like when I worked here, when we would do like getting to know you things on Mondays, we would always do, I never wanted to just do like, okay, and what's your favorite ice cream? I would always try to like make it
so
like
shallow.
We're not third graders anymore. We can get deeper. So really just any way that I could, kind of like forcing them to open up, because I even have friendships now, and especially when I was on staff, that I made when I was in kitchen and when I was a JC. And so I was kind of not just like trying to get deeper and deepen relationships with my girls, but also help them, because I think as a leader, it's also our jobs to help others build those relationships too, because especially as like a young high schooler, sometimes it's not easy to just like walk into a room full of people that you have no idea, especially if like some of them might know each other and things. It's definitely like a leadership skill that you have to learn to make those groups into like one big group. And not that there's anything wrong with like smaller friend groups or anything, but just like helping people realize like how important those relationships are. Obviously not everybody's going to be best friends with each other, but I would always try to like make sure everybody felt connected and was plugged in, because especially even back then when I was on staff, like since there wasn't a recruiting thing or recruiting team or anything, I was like, if these girls are not connected to friends, not just me, but like having friends on staff, they're not going to know like what all staff can be. And so those are kind of like the mindsets that I had back then. And so I definitely like still kind of use those same things. Like obviously it's really easy for me to translate like my work at camp to my work at school, because it's a very similar situation. Sure. I work at a Christian school, and so everything's like very similar. That happens to be run by former counselor Monty Mansur, so like it's just it's very camp everywhere we can be. And so I definitely like try to use those same things to help kids get connected, because even in a smaller school like we are, there's kids that feel like outcasts, and that just is hurt. Like I just never want to see that. I would always rather go sit with the kid, but bring the kid in to another group and help them get plugged into a friendship and everything. So
you're very much like a coach, right? You're coaching a team. Now you're coaching a team with assistant coaches.
Yeah.
Right? Where you're having them go and do. And so you're trying to bring your team together.
Yeah.
And it's not just doing tasks. I think it's so easy when you're managing people to just see the tasks. Mm-hmm. And hey, we accomplished all the tasks, so it must have been good.
Right.
Right? That was good leadership because we got the job done. But if nobody wants to come back, mm-hmm. right? There's that retention piece to it.
Yep.
And no matter what you're doing.
Yeah.
You know, I love the book It's Your Ship by Captain Michael Arbashoff. You know, he took over a ship in the Navy that had a 20% retention rate, took it to a 100% retention rate.
Wow.
Because the person before him was all focused on getting the job done. Mm-hmm. And it was just, hey, listen to me, do what I say just because I said so.
Yeah.
Versus instead of, hey, do what I'm asking you to do because we have a great relationship.
Yep.
And you want to be a part of this vision or this journey that we're going on.
Yeah.
I mean, that's basically what you've learned how to do, and that is leadership 101, especially in today's world.
Yeah.
Because, you know, back in the day, I don't know, I'm going 30 years ago, we were in a command economy of leadership where it's because I commanded you to. Mm-hmm. But now we're in a connection economy of leadership.
Yeah.
And you are embodying that kind of leadership, and I think that's what draws people back.
For sure. Yeah.
So what else? I think connection is. I mean, fun connection, Jesus. That's who we are. So connection is the foundation,
definitely,
of everything. And doesn't it make those talks easier? You know, I think so, I don't like having a talk. Hey, Emma, we need to talk.
Right.
I hate it when people do that to me.
Right.
I like it when it's just a natural conversation.
Yeah.
And we can just like do, and obviously I'm not saying that there's not room for that. There's places for that. There's things you have to handle,
Definitely.
right? There's things where it's, hey, let's talk about this, right? But it's always nicer, I think, Hetty would say it's better on the front end, like the setup, than it is on the back end of the mess up.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
The setup is better than the mess up.
Yeah.
And so the setup, but being able in those natural conversations to work in leadership concepts. Is that something that you try and do?
Definitely. And I think like leading by example is a lot easier for me because like you said, like those conversations are never fun and sometimes they are necessary, but it comes a lot more naturally to me. And I think just because I spent so much time at camp, it comes a lot more naturally to me to like get in there. Like even if it's like, hey, we need to get this job done faster, or like, hey, we need to take the trash out. What if I like go and start to get the trash? Like let's lead by example instead of just like, hey, can you go over there? I need that done. I think that's definitely more of like my leadership style. And I know there's like different ways, but for me personally, I think just showing more than telling is like really huge for me because that's what I always really was drawn to in leaders in my life.
I love that. That's servant leadership, right? Follow me as I follow Christ, right? Not, hey, go follow Christ.
Right. Exactly.
Let me be the example. Let me be out front, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to be out in front.
Mm-hmm.
That's what the leader should be doing. I really, really like it. Do you like to ask? I know for me, I like to ask.
Yes.
Like, are you like, hey, Emma, would you mind?
I've never been like, go do that.
Right.
It's like so uncomfortable for me.
Yeah.
Like even if it's like something that really is like, even in a talk, like even on like the one-on-one, like I might be getting onto, I'm like, what do you think about that? What happened here? It's never just gonna, and I learned that from you, directly from you. But it's never ever gonna be like, you did this. What are you thinking? It's like I heard something that sounded like this might have happened.
Now you're spilling my secrets now.
Sorry.
I love it.
But yeah, it's definitely, I'm an asker, not a teller.
I think it draws people to you, right?
Yeah.
It's almost like it was an option.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I always try to feed it like that.
It's never optional,
Right.
but it sounds, sure.
Yeah, I would love to.
Yeah. Hey, Emma, would you mind taking out this trash? Yeah. Thank you.
Exactly.
Thank you for asking.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
I love to give those opportunities to people.
Right. To me, I always see it, and you've definitely done it. You're making deposits into a bank account that you want to make withdrawals on by the end of the week, right?
Yeah.
I always want to draw people to me, not repel people away.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, I think, like you said, you've observed different leaders, and I've seen leaders that repel people, and I'm like, okay, I don't want to do that.
Right.
And then I've seen leaders that draw people, and I'm like, I want to do that.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, leadership is very easy.
Yeah.
Do you make people want to follow you or not?
Exactly.
I mean, I think you and I are. What's your Enneagram?
I'm a 7 wing 6.
Wow.
Yes.
Didn't see that coming. 7 wing 6, because I think you and I
of the party.
But you and I have very similar leadership styles.
Definitely.
And I'm a 3 wing 2.
Mm-hmm.
But those both have, the 2 and the 6 have that relational component to it. And I think that's what we're picking up on. And that's the same, the 6 and the 3. And not that we're trying to nerd out on the Enneagram here today, because I sure can. I could go an hour and a half nerding out on the Enneagram. People are like, all right, moving on. I definitely can.
Skip.
Yeah, that's right. But I love it because, once again, it's not about putting people in a box, but it's about knowing your tendencies.
Yeah.
And knowing the unhealthy and healthy part of your tendencies and how you can work on that. And that's something I've tried to do. Because, buddy, when I'm unhealthy, I am a driver. I mean, I am driving people, and they are like, and it repels.
Yeah.
And that's not good. It's usually when I'm just stressed out and overworked. And that's not good either. And so, okay, so what are some of the things that you've liked? Some of the changes we've made that you like?
Okay, well, the EC is so cool, like literally. I love that like bigs and littles is split for stuff now.
Okay, and explain that.
That's for those of you listening that were not here the past couple of summers, like me, so now since they have second graders here, it's 2nd through 4th. Is that right? Mm-hmm. Is considered littles at camp,
which we don't call them that.
Hey, little.
No, we say 2nd through 4th.
Yeah. So the 2nd through 4th graders will go to crucifixion and Friday nights. Is that the only 2 things? Oh, and Devos.
Morning Devos.
Yeah. So they have like a few things that are separate so that you can really get to them on their level, instead of either having to like simmer down something for the older kids that can handle it, or trying to introduce a second grader to a concept that's like way too big or way too, like just not necessary for them to know.
They're 4 years away from that.
Right. And so the 5th through graduates, still have like the same like devos and Friday nights and crucifixion, as we always did at camp. And then now I sat in the littles crucifixion a couple weeks ago, and it's really, really cool. Like, can I give it a, I don't know, like if we talk about
I don't know. I honestly have never been.
Well, it's really cool because it's like really highlighting.
I probably have to.
Let me tell you,
Lindley, obviously we have really smart people that are there, like
right,
Lindley and whatever.
Right.
So
they like
good.
really highlight the resurrection for them, and it's like everybody's going crazy, and there's like a lot more speaking. It's not just like acting out with music. There's a lot of like talking parts that are explaining like who these different people are and their relationship to Jesus. So kind of introducing them to a couple different like Bible stories throughout the way also. And then by the end of it, the kids are like giving Jesus high fives, and like it's great. And like kids will leave, and as they're like walking out and you're like, hey, like have a good night. And they're just like, that was awesome. And like actually like really learning something instead of like
sobbing.
I am crying because I've seen everyone here that's crying, and I don't know what is going on.
I'm emotionally wrecked.
Right. So
I just think it makes it more age appropriate,
right.
Don't you? Like
100%.
It's like this is targeted to them. You know, and I think there's a balance you can have. You know, for us, we're so family styled here.
Yep.
Everybody just did everything together.
Exactly.
But there is something to classifying it a little bit, and those are small moments.
Mm-hmm.
You just named the only 3 times we do it, and they're small moments, but they're important moments for them to be separate.
Yeah,
definitely. And you know, and I guess actually you probably named most of the spiritual type moments where we're making it a little more age appropriate.
Yeah, and I think that's so important. I think a lot of times, like, especially in today's world, there's a lot of people like around my age that had like just some different like traumas from like Christian camps and stuff, that they felt like they were like forced to have an emotional connection over a spiritual connection. And I think it's because you're just thrown into it not knowing what's happening. And so when you see everybody crying and you don't know what's going on, and even if someone is having a crazy spiritual connection that's like making the tears fall or something, these little kids have no clue. And so then these kids are like terrified to ever go back. That's the only experience they ever had. And so then it's like the Christian camps are like getting a bad rap because they just didn't understand it. And so when we're able to like ease kids in and wait until they like have that grasp on what's going on, I think that's huge. And I think that's so important. So I love that, like, especially Friday nights, like the big, huge ministry night is split. And Little's after party on Friday nights is so fun.
Oh, they love having camp to themselves for a minute, right? It's like, get these older kids out of my way for this minute. They love the older kids. They look up to them, but but they really get to have the place to themselves, and they do, you know, some special things.
Yeah. And I think like most nights at the end of like the Friday night, like Levi will go around and ask them like, what was your favorite part of the week? And still, even with them like not having like the Friday night ministry time or anything like that, it's always like when my counselor told the Bible story in the bunkhouse, it's like when we learned this at Devos and like things like that, crucifixion, like those are still the favorite moments, like the moments that were so meaningful to them. And it's not in a I will never forget seeing that way. It's like, that was
Passion
awesome.
Of the cries for the second graders.
So yeah, I think that's really cool.
I love that. Yes, it's a great point that I don't think I've seen it from that perspective. I think that's a really good perspective. I know for me as a camper in like 3rd and 4th grade, I was like, when is this going to be done? I want to have some fun.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You know, whereas, you know, 6th, 7th, 8th, I was like, okay, I understand what's going on. Right. I'm actually I'm into what they're talking about here.
Definitely.
So I think that is such a good point. Hey, what do you think about the new change this year with the Bible stories?
I think it's cool. Obviously, I'm not in a cabin. I live in the Verbo. However, I think it's so cool that all of the cabins, like even at nighttime, are like learning the same thing and like getting the same message. I think that's like so like just helpful to camp as a whole, so that it's not like what did your counselor tell you about? Like at the end of the week. I just hear like horror stories about boys telling all these poop stories.
Yes.
And that's crazy. And now we get to learn about Samson.
Right.
Everybody the same night. And we know like what the kids are learning, and the kids can go and talk to their friends that they've made in their activities about, did you hear this? Oh my gosh, well, I heard this. And like, it's all the same thing. And they're able to like talk about that too outside of the bunkhouse.
I love that. I love it. It's so fun for you to get to see where we've gone to where we are.
Definitely.
And I mean, Emma, your family has just such a big, I call y'all like Brookhill royalty, the Mansurs, I mean, I had your uncles and your dad, and then, obviously seeing y'all. I mean, every time, it was always my favorite. I would fanboy when Monty would show up. I mean, I was a fourth grader.
Right.
When you see your hero from the fourth grade, he's still your hero from the fourth grade.
Yeah.
And the fact that your dad never ages. Like, he looks the same today that he
will
did.
Love hearing that.
I'm telling you, and
his hair's a little bit smaller.
Oh.
He used to have puffy hair.
Okay, yeah, no, he did. Now, does your dad ever do this? Okay, so your dad would sit
Yes.
there in camp, and like he would bring his hand over his head, and they called it like the Monty Thinker or something.
So my dad's wingspan, my dad is 6'2", and his wingspan is like 7'6". Like most people, that's the same. But he has these outrageously long arms, and he can literally like wrap all the way around and like touch his chin, basically. And yeah, that's still literally the Monty Thinker. Like that is his pose for like it's always like a shock, or like, what are you about to say to me? Or like, you just brought the weirdest problem to me that I have to figure out now. Still him. Yep.
I remember him. He was one of the ones that would sit on stage, because when we had cabin cleanup, he would be at the front. I think it was like him and James Steen and Quentin Miner, and they would sit on the front. And so you would see, and then they would turn around and look at the crowd, right? And they'd be right there at Cato's feet as Cato's doing cabin cleanup. And so, yeah, and then Monty would just be up there like that. And it was just so odd. And he's redheaded anyway. So you're like, and he's 6'2", like you're saying.
Right.
It's like, there's this.
You can't miss him.
You can't miss that guy. And then, of course, Ben, his brother, you couldn't miss him either. They look like twins.
Yeah.
But I got pictures of all those guys from when I was younger. And so I love so you're second generation of Brookhill, right?
I'm a Nepo baby.
Okay. So, we're getting third generation. We're actually getting a lot of third generation
so cool.
kids. It is so cool. There was another one last week.
Wow.
Where grandma had been here, and then mom, and then two boys.
That's so cool.
It's really, really cool. Just the legacy that Brookhill has. So let me ask you this as we kind of start to bring this to a close. What does Brookhill mean to you? What is the legacy of Brookhill to you?
I think for me, it's just taught me everything that I know and act on, like on a daily basis. We were talking about leadership, but just in like lifestyle too. Like just both like when I was a camper learning things from counselors, and even like my time on staff, I was just constantly like taking in all this knowledge. And if I didn't learn it specifically from camp, then I promise Hetty taught it to my dad, and he taught it to me from her. And so it's really just who I am. And that was like a big part of like when you called me, there was no way I couldn't come back. Like that's just, it's just like, I mean, Brookhill's in my veins, and it always will be. And so I just think like so much of what I'm able to do like on a daily basis is because of things that I learned at camp. So I love it.
I love that. Well, Emma, thank you for being on the podcast today.
Thank you for having me. Dream come true.
I just love having conversations with our alumni, and you are one of the GOATs for sure. So anyway, we appreciate you.
All right. Thank you.